Well, hello there and welcome back to Crochet Along with Miss Carol at the Bloomingdale Public Library. Today we are going to work on crocheted critters. You'll find the pattern in the same place. Go to the Bloomingdale Public Library website. Go to the program section. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. It'll say Youth Program Handouts. Click on that. There'll be a folder for Crochet Along with Miss Carol, and your pattern will be right there for you. I want to show you a little bit, a few of the critters I've made with the same basic pattern, and then making the ears and the nose little different shapes to make different critters. So I have a fox with his little white nose, long, skinny nose, pointy ears. I have a mouse with a smaller nose, bigger, rounder ears. Here's my koala, and this I want you to see in case things don't work the way you thought they were going to. I was making a mouse, and when I got him to the point where I had his nose on him and his ears on him, he said, "I'm not a mouse, I'm a koala." So I added some fuzzies to the sides of his ears, and I have a koala. I made an owl, and I changed the basic pattern just a little bit by adding more single crochet rounds right here in the middle so that it made him an oblong instead of a ball. And then I gave him some wings and some ear fluffs, and I used bigger colored eyes for him. Here's my Chihuahua. And last but not least, I want to show you the bear, because the bear is the critter that we are going to make today. I am going to show you how to make the bear. In your pattern, you will have instructions on how to do the pointed ears, and instructions on how to make how to change the shape of your snout as you want to. Some of it, most of it, is just playing around and seeing what looks right to you. But I'm gonna give you the basic pattern for the bear with the little round ears and a basic snout. We're gonna use safety eyes today and a safety nose. If you are making your project for a gift for a child who is under 3 years old, I would suggest that you get some embroidery floss and an embroidery needle and embroider your eyes and your nose in place, because these safety eyes, even though they're called safety, they can come loose and they can be a choking hazard. So this is definitely for children 3 years old and older who are not as at risk with choking pieces, with small pieces. So our materials for today and our tools, here's my trusty crochet hook, which you all know well. Pair of scissors, always necessary when you're working with yarn. My yarn needle for sewing in my ends. My stitch marker is going to be very important as we work in the round today. We'll see that when that comes up. And then also to finish my project, I need some fluff to stuff it with. You can also use, I bought my fluff and it's not very expensive at the craft store, but you could also use, if you have an old pillow that maybe is worn or faded and you're gonna toss it, pull the fluff out of it and you reuse it. Or you could use old pantyhose or old socks. You might have to cut them up a little bit so that they're not so bulky. But reuse materials if you'd want to do that and don't want to spend money on the stuffing fluff. And then last but not least, I have these. This is a box. I ordered mine off of Amazon. I just searched for safety eyes. This particular box has several different sizes of eyes, and it has a couple of different styles of noses as well. I think the whole box cost me $10 to $15 and was delivered directly to my door. They also make them in different colors. These are all black, but they make them with different eye colors, different iris colors. So take a look online with your grown-up and see, get yourself a supply of these if you think this is something. You could also buy your materials at the craft store. Probably want to look where the doll making materials are, not where the crochet stuff is. Or ask somebody there, they can show you where to find safety eyes. All right then, I think we're ready to go. Oh, I forgot, we can't make crochet without yarn. So today we're going to do a bear. I'm using a light brown yarn because it'll be easier for you to see what I'm doing than it would be if I did the dark brown like I made my sample bear out of. So we'll use light brown yarn. This is just acrylic. You know, this might be a little bit bigger than the yarn I've been using, so my bear might come out a little bit bigger. But we'll see. This is what happens when you take the wrappers off of your yarn and then store it in your stash box and then come back later and say, I wonder what size that is. So keep your wrapper with your yarn or stick a little piece of something in it that tells you what the size of your yarn is, and you'll never have that problem that Miss Carol has. But it's not a big problem. It doesn't matter to me how big my bear is. Let's get started. All right, so the stitches that we're going to use today will be the single crochet stitch, which we've used before. The slip stitch we'll use at the end when we finish our project. You've used that before. And then the new stitch that we're going to learn today is called the magic circle. The magic circle can be a little tricky. You have to get used to holding your yarn. It takes a little bit. It can be a little frustrating. But if you stick with it and learn this skill, it'll give your projects a much cleaner, much more professional look than otherwise. If you get too frustrated with it and you say, I don't want to deal with this, you can always chain 2 and then do your crochet, your first row crochets in the first chain that you did, like we did with our coasters. But let's try this magic circle. So I'm going to hold my yarn in my non-dominant hand. This is my left hand because I'm right-handed. I want to give myself a little bit of a tail here to work with. I'm going to bring my yarn around and make a circle. Whoops, let's get it in the frame there. Just like that. Okay, not going to tie a knot or anything yet. Going to put it on my hand, I like my yarn to work. And then I'm going to pick up my hook. I'm going to go on the inside from facing me. Going to go through the circle. I'm going to grab that yarn and pull it into the loop up on this side and then do a slip stitch. That'll hold that magic circle in place. So here I have the circle. Let's try that again. So here I have it. It's laying in my hand. I'm going to make a circle just with my yarn, just like that. Hold it here, put my yarn on my hand so it's in my good for working. It's just my tension here, so I have it. I'm going to take my hook and go from the side facing me towards my fingers, grab that working yarn, pull a loop up, and do a slip stitch. Now my pattern tells me to make a magic circle and 6 single crochet into the magic circle and pull tight. So let's do 6 single crochets inside this magic circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I have like a row of 6 stitches. This is where the magic comes in. I'm going to take my short end and I'm going to pull it tight. Pull that right through there. And that's going to pull that right around so that it makes a circle. My next stitch is the first stitch of row 2, and it's going to go into the top of the first stitch, the first single crochet that I made. sometimes it's a little tricky to get into that first stitch. I tend to make mine a little tighter than the others for some reason. All right, now I'm going to use my stitch marker so that I know when I've gotten around to the first stitch of row 2, so I know when to start row 3. Now, row 2 says that I'm supposed to 2 single crochet in each stitch around. So I'm going to add another one into that stitch. Here we go. Single crochet in each stitch around. Oops, that stitch marker wants to get in the way. It just needs to do its job there. Okay, so now we can see that we're back around to the first row of row 2. Let's count those stitches and make sure that we have 12 like it tells us we need in our pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, now we're going to increase each. That was our first increase. We're going to increase another round, which means we're going to add 1 stitch for each of the original stitches to each round. So the original round, we did 6 stitches. The second round, we did 2 stitches in each of those 6, which gave us 12 stitches. Now we're going to do 3 stitches in each of those 2 so that we will have 18 stitches. So let's try this. We're going to go ahead and just go ahead and single crochet. I'm going to take my stitch marker out so that I can see where I'm putting my crochet hook, but I'm not going to let it get too far because I don't want to forget to put it back in. So there's 1 stitch in the first single crochet. And then I'm going to do 2 stitches for a total of 3 in the second single crochet. 1. And that's the first, what we call a repeat. 1, 2, 3. Let's try that again. 1 into that next single crochet, and then 2 and 3 into the next stitch. So we have 1 stitch that we do one single crochet in, and the next stitch we're going to do 2 single crochet. And I can count it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I should have 18 stitches, so let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. When you're working in the round like this and you're getting started, this is new to you, it's a good idea to count your stitches every row. I once did a big project. It was a circle sweater, and it had like 80 rows of stitches that I had to increase on every row. And I didn't count my stitches, and I got to row 25, I think, and found out I had miscounted back at row 2, and I had to pull the whole thing out. No stitches ever wasted. You take a deep breath, you frog, 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 and you start over again. But it is a lot easier if you count your stitches, and it's a good way to learn your lesson. Count your stitches with every row, and you'll avoid missing those mistakes until you're at the end of a pattern. All right, so I'm on row 4 I'm going to take my stitch marker out. I'm going to single crochet into the next stitch. And I want 4 stitches in each repeat. And I'm going to double on the last 2 stitches. So I have 1 single crochet and 1 stitch. My second single crochet goes into the next stitch. Then I have 3, and then 4 goes into the same stitch. You'll notice that my count on my repeat is the same number as the round that I'm working on. So if I'm on round 4, I know I need to have 4 stitches in each repeat. So let's do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we go. We've got 4 rows of our circle done. Now, if you look ahead on our pattern, we're going to do that same thing. Add 1 stitch per round all the way up through round 7. So I've shown you how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and work on mine off camera. You go ahead and work on yours off camera. When you get to round 8, turn the video back on, and we're ready to move on to the next step. All right, we're back. I have 7 rows done. I have 42 stitches around the outside. I counted those when I was off camera. Did you count yours? If not, pause your video, count your stitches, make sure that you have 42 at this point. It'll make a difference when we get to the, not the next part. You won't notice if there's something off in the next part, but then the part after that, it'll make a difference, and you don't want to have to rip all the way back to here to fix it. So for the next rounds 8 through 12, we're going to single crochet in each stitch around. So just 1 single crochet in each single crochet, which means that in each of the next 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5 rows, we're going to have 42 stitches. So I'll do 1 round with you, and then we'll pause the camera again while you work on yours off camera, and I'll work on mine off camera. So I'm going to do that first single crochet and then put my stitch marker back so I know when I've completed that round and are ready to do the next one. 1 stitch in each stitch around. So I'm going to do 42 stitches. And my yarn is, it's coming out okay. Most skeins these days, the acrylic that you would find at your common craft store, are made so that you pull the yarn from the middle of the skein, and it should flow pretty smoothly. But once in a while, you'll get something that fiber artists refer to as yarn barf. And that's a knot in your yarn that comes out of your skein. And it makes you stop and you have to untangle it before you move on. Sometimes it's not a big deal. It takes just a minute or two. That's one of the reasons I like to roll my yarn into a ball, before I start working with it, if I'm working especially on a big project, because I would rather stop while rolling the ball and take care of those knots than stop while I'm crocheting to do it. So we're almost around here. It looks like about 2/3 of the way. This skein seems to be coming pretty easily here for me. I had a little knot there while we were working off camera, but it wasn't too bad. If you do decide to roll your yarn into a ball, just remember to keep the tension on your yarn very light. If you roll it into a tight ball, it can stretch the yarn and change the way the yarn flows, and you don't want that. All right, so I have row 8 done. Rows 9, 10, 11, and 12 are exactly the same thing. I'm going to work on mine off camera. You go ahead and work on yours off camera, and I'll meet you back here when we're ready to start row 13. All right then, so you've got your first 12 rounds done. We're ready to start on round 13, and this is where we're going to start to decrease. When we decrease, we're going to decrease the number of stitches per round. Now remember that the last round we did on our increases, we had 7 stitches per repeat, and we had 6 repeats for a total of 42 stitches. So now we're going to decrease to 6 stitches per repeat for 6 repeats, and we're going to have a total of 36 stitches. Tell your math teacher that you're crocheting and you're practicing your multiplication tables. She'll like that, or he'll like that. All right, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and do our first 5 stitches in each of the next stitches. Don't forget to put your stitch marker back. So that's 1 stitch. 2, 3, 4. Whoops, look at that. I didn't quite make it all the way through that stitch. Let's go back a bit. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now my 6th stitch is going to be my decrease. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hook and put it through the next stitch and pull up a loop, just like if I was going to make a regular single crochet. Except I want to spread that crochet over 2 stitches, so I'm going to take my hook again, do it into the next stitch, bring up a loop, and I have 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, and pull that through all 3 loops. That made those 2 stitches into 1 stitch, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. I'm going to do another repeat of 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my 6th stitch is going to be that decrease. So I'm going to go through and pull up a loop, go through the next stitch, pull up a loop, and pull through all 3 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then decrease. One, two, three, 4, 5, and then decrease. And we've made it around. That's row 13. For row 14, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to decrease by 1, so we want 5 stitches per repeat for 6 repeats. 5 times 6, that's a total of 30 stitches. So here's my first stitch. I want to make sure I put that stitch marker in so I know when I've gotten around to there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and now my 5th stitch is going to be my decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 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 decrease. One, 2, 3, 4, and then a decrease. All right, your next row, look at that. Look, see how that's starting to come together? Your next row, you're going to do 4 stitches per repeat, so 3 single crochet and then a decrease. I'm going to let you do that off camera. I'm going to do mine off camera, and then we'll come back together and I'll show you how to set your eyes and start putting your stuffing in before your hole gets too small. All right, so we should be at the end of round 15. You should have 24 stitches. If you haven't counted, to make sure you have 24, count now. Make sure there are 24 stitches there. And now it's time to go ahead and place our eyes. So I have my little eye selection here, and I'm going to choose, I like big eyes for my bear. So I'm going to choose some of these bigger eyes. And then I'm going to count down from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to put an eye between rows 6 and 7. And you see, it has a little pokey thing on the back, and I'm just going to poke that in there between the stitches. And I'm going to put the other one, and I'm going to eyeball it. Yep, I did that. Let's see. I don't want his eyes too close together here, but I don't want him too far apart either. He's a predator, not prey, and so his eyes will be on the front of his head, not the sides of his head. So, I think that looks about right. I have them set there. Once I put these little backs on, you see that, how the pokey thing goes in the hole? Once I put that on, it's going to be hard to take them off. Of course, unless I don't want them to come off. So there, it popped in. That one's in place. And do the same thing over here. Put another one on this one over here. pull it down tight so that it comes over those little ridges and pops in place and my eyes are secured. Now I'm going to put my stuffing in. Make sure that your little tail of yarn in the middle, don't cut it too short because it's going to be inside, nobody's going to see it, and you don't want it to come unraveled. So I'm just cut it a little bit so that it can go in there, and I'm going to put some stuffing in a little at a time. I don't want to stuff him too tight so that the stuffing shows between the stitches, but I want him to be nice and round. I don't want him to be floppy. There we go. And remember, I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to save that piece. I'm going to put it in after the next round I do here. So I'm going to decrease another round. And now it gets a little tricky because I have to work with that stuffing trying to come out. So I have to kind of keep pushing that in with my fingers. And it's kind of like herding cats. It just takes a little bit of persistence and you'll get the job done. So one, put my marker back in there. Now remember that we are on row 14. No, we're on row 16, which means we're doing 3 stitches per repeat. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and then decrease. 1, 2, and then decrease. 1, 2, decrease. 1, 2, decrease. 1, 2, and decrease. All right, it still seems like I have plenty of yarn, plenty of stuffing in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the next row. So I'm going to do 2 stitches per repeat. So I'm going to have a total of 12. So I'm going to do that first one and put my stitch marker back in. One decrease. I did one decrease. One. I did a decrease, and now I do one again. 1 and decrease. And then 1 and decrease. Now be careful that I don't pull any more stuffing through there than I have to. 1 and decrease. 1 and decrease. 1 and decrease. Now this can get kind of hard on your hands because you're working in the round and you're working around that stuffing and your hands might get sore. So if your hands get too sore, put it down for a few minutes, stretch them, do something else, go get a glass of water, let your hands rest a little bit, and then come back to it with fresh hands. It doesn't have to all be done in one setting. All right, so now I'm down to 1 stitch per repeat, so which means I'm going to just decrease all the way around. I still want to be able to tell when I've gotten to where I started. So I'm going to take that stitch marker out. I'm going to go ahead and decrease. There we go. And I'm going to put the stitch marker back in there. So that's 1 decrease. I'll have a total of 6 of those. Two. All right. I am going to take that stitch out and pull it tighter here because that had gotten a little loose and my tension had gotten loose and my stitch had gotten a little long. There we go. There we go. All right, last decrease right there. And make sure I get through that. And then I'm going to go into that first stitch that I made, yarn over, pull it through, and pull into a slip stitch and finish off. And give myself a good bit of length of yarn because I'm going to sew the bottom closed. Now I can take my stitch marker out and put it in its little place on my basket to use later. All right. Now I didn't need that little fluff bit. Here's my needle. I'm going to thread my needle. Remember how we do this to make it easy? You pull it over the needle, pull it kind of tight, and then hit that flat edge through the edge of the needle. And there you go. Now to sew this up, you're going to do a stitch around in these stitches, but I'm only going to go through the outside loop of each stitch. So outside loop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and I'm going to pull that closed, and it's going to work almost like the magic loop at the top did. I'm going to pull it closed and kind of disappear. Now, I want to make sure that that's tied off, so I'm going to just stick it through here and pull it back this way. It's tied in a knot. And then I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to stick it in somewhere right here where it's not going to show and pull it through. It doesn't matter where I pull it through. This is another little piece of magic. Pull it through like that. Now I'm going to pull it pretty tight. Pull it up pretty tight, and I'm going to snip it close to the space. And then it's going to pop back inside my little critter so that there's no ends showing. So there's the head with the eyes in place. Now, let's make some ears for our little guy. we're going to start our ears. Again, we're going to use a magic circle, and we're going to use 6 single crochet in the magic circle. So I went through there, I did my little slip stitch to hold it together, and then I'm going to do 6 single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to pull that little string and bring it tight right around there. Now, but instead, I want this to be a half circle. So instead of working into that first stitch I made, I'm going to chain 1, and turn my project, and I'm going to work back into the stitch I just made, and I'm going to do 2 single crochet in each stitch. Now, I should have 12 stitches, so let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whoops, see, I only had 10 stitches. I missed this next single crochet down there that looked like that was a turning chain. $11, 12. Now I'm going to slip stitch. I'm going to finish that off and leave a large enough tail that I can sew my ear in place. Now, bears have 2 ears, and I'm just going to, my little bear, my first bear that I made, I gave him some little contrast on the inside of his ear. If you want to do that, go ahead and just make another one of those magic circles with 6 single crochet. Only at the end of your 6 single crochet, just finish it off and tie it off, and then sew that to the inside of your bigger part of the ear. But this little bear is only going to have the one color on his ears. So I made 1. I'm going to make a second one. These are real quick and easy. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did my chain 1. I'm going to pull that together pretty tight. I'm going to bring them around. 12, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and this one's a little difficult to get in there. Come on, guy. 11, 12, finish it off. my needle on that piece of thread. I'm going to weave this into the other side. So I'm going to weave it through there and through there. It gives it a nice flat thing, and I'm ready to sew my ear on. Now this is where it gets tricky. This, you have to decide where you want your ear to go and how. I like it at about 1, 2, 3, 4 rows down to be right about there. And just about the middle, a little bit about behind his eye. So, I'm going to, oh come on, I don't like these needles. These are the brand I prefer. So as you get more experienced, you'll find that you'll have a favorite brand of crochet hook and a favorite brand of yarn needle, ones that work well for you and your style. So I'm going to down here, and I'm just going to sew this ear right in place. Let's see, back up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Oh, that's going to come around. Let's try this way. And it's going to come through over here. Come on. All right, it's in place. I'm going to tie it off. And then I'm going to tuck that yarn inside there like I did before, just like that. And the same with this extra piece of tail here. Now see, if I leave myself a long enough yarn on my tail, I can put it into my needle and tuck it in well, and then snip it the right length. So the placement of the ears is something that takes practice, and sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't, and I figure when I don't get it exactly right, that just gives him a little more personality. So we're going to get this other ear in here. Work that back over to that other side. Go about 4 down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just make sure that you're happy with where you put your ears and your eyes and things before you clip or snap them into place, so that if you do want to move them or adjust them, you can do that. So, okay. See, and I'm going ahead and letting you watch me do this to see that I kind of struggle with this part too. So it just takes some perseverance and patience. And the bear will be patient with me if I'm patient with the yarn. And remember, crocheting is supposed to help you relax. So if you find you're getting frustrated and it's not working right, put it down for a little bit and then come back to it when you're fresh, and maybe it'll work a little better. All right, that ear's sewn in place. I'm going to tie it off so that it doesn't come unraveled. I'm gonna tuck that end away inside my bear. That end. There. They aren't exactly even, but he's cute enough for me. Now, the last piece of the bear is to make his little nose. So I've called this a snout on your instructions. Oh, and you see we skipped over the pointed ear pattern. If you decided you wanted to make a fox, or a doggy, or a cat. I've tried to make a cat, but I haven't made one that looks like a cat yet. Still working on that. Go ahead and do that other set of patterns. And if you have difficulty with it, send me an email. We'll get together somehow and be socially distanced and masked, but help you figure it out. All right, so now I'm ready for my snout. And here I go, I'm all with that basic magic circle again. This time I only need one because he only has one nose. I'm gonna do the slip stitch to hold it in place. 6 single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's everything I needed. So I'm going to pull it tight. I don't want to pull it real tight because I want to be able to put my nose, my safety nose in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into the round 2. Get into that first stitch, which sometimes is a little tight. There's 1, and I'm 2 single crocheting in each stitch because we're going to increase here. All right, and then my 3 and 4, I am going to do 1 stitch around, so 12 stitches. Now, you can play with your snout and See what different shapes you can get. The more straight rounds, just one stitch per one single crochet per stitch, will make it longer. You can make it a little sharper if you do one single crochet per stitch before you do an increase. It'll make your increase more gradual. So it'll make it like a sharper snout, like this one. Whoops, put him down here where you can see him, like that one. Play around with it. See what works for the critter you're trying to make. I am not doing a double crochet, I'm doing a single crochet. All right, I'm going to move that stitch marker. And then just one more round. Doesn't need a very big snout. All right, back around to the beginning. I'm going to fasten that off. Take my stitch marker out now. Give myself plenty of yarn to sew with. Now I want to get rid of this. I don't want to cut it too short. Again, it's going to be on the inside of the nose, so it's not going to show, but I don't want too much of it there to get in my way while I'm working. Now, let's see what I've got here. My little set has this cute little nose. If you can see it, the detail, it has his little nostrils and stuff in there. That's the nose I'm going to use for my bear today. It also has just a plain oval nose. That's what I used for my koala bear. And there's a plain triangle without the little nostrils and stuff. So I'm going to put that right in that center hole, right there where I had my magic circle. And make sure I have the right shape, the right size piece to hold this in place. Okay, I'm going to put that down and I'm going to use my nails to push it on until it snaps into place. There we go. There we go. That shouldn't come out. But again, I wouldn't trust it with very small children. Not something to put on a baby's toy. All right, here's my bear. Now again, this is a matter of where does it go? Put it so that it's between the eyes, centered. I think I want his nose to be up a little higher because he's kind of a bear with a higher nose. And I placed it before I put my needle on. That was silly. All right. So I'm going to stitch it into place here. And when I get it stitched into place a little bit, then I'm going to add my stuffing. So, can you see what I'm doing there? Okay. Just a few stitches here. Right around. It can be a little tricky, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. Needle. Okay, I don't want to wait too much longer. I've got that hole there. It's just about right. I don't need a lot of fluff, just enough to give it some shape. Yeah, that's maybe too much. And then we have, then the tricky part comes, sewing it into place with the stuffing in it. And having a needle that's bending on me doesn't help. If you're still using the needle that I gave you with your kit and you're getting frustrated with it, have your mom or your dad or a grown-up that's helping you with your crochet see about getting a needle with a little more strength to it so that you don't have this problem that I'm having with the needle, with the end of it poking. In fact, I'm going to try just snipping that off because that's just being a pain. And now it's going to catch on my yarn. There we go, that's better. There we go. But a package of those little plastic needles. Let's see if I have one of my plastic needles here. The plastic needles like this, the blue ones that are, the most of them are blue, a little more heft to them. This one is a little bit big, that's why I'm not using it right now. I got the wrong size. So go in person to the craft store with somebody and make sure you get one that's the right size, a little smaller than this. But it makes a big difference in how easy it is to do your sewing when you're sewing things in place and weaving your ends in. Just snipping off that end made this a little better. And needles are one of those things that they get lost or they get worn out. Actually, I've had needles, the plastic ones, break in half, or the eye breaks so that it won't hold my yarn anymore. So it's one of those ongoing costs, but they're not too expensive. They're less than $5 for a package of usually 2 or 3. Sometimes you can get them in packages of 4. All right, we're going to stick this in there. Pull it through so it hides my end. And there, meet Mr. Bear. This is called Amigurumi, or the art of making stuffed animals or stuffed toys out of yarn, whether it's knitting or crochet. It's called Amigurumi, and it's Amigurumi. If you feel confident in what you did today and you want to try something a little more, then have a grown-up help you get on the internet and search for easy or beginner crochet patterns. And you can limit that search to whatever it is you want to make, whether you want to make more coasters or a scarf or a hat, or amigurumi. And there are beginner amigurumi patterns. So you can find more little critters to make if you'd like to do that. We will have another program in October. Watch for October 15th. And I believe we're going to be making a scarf for the cold weather coming up. So I'll see you then. Happy crocheting.